Hello, Banu. In this short screencast, I'm going to give you feedback to last week's summary. Okay, so let's begin. First of all, let me say you've taken good notes here. Main ideas, supporting ideas, okay. Not bad. In the video, title, very good. Name of speaker, argues that. That's a good verb to use as always. Argumentative, very good. People are not aware of the fact everyone has implicit biases, and unconsciously, even with a deep understanding of society and life principles, our behavior is still inconsistent. Okay. Yeah, I'd say this is a little bit too wordy. It's a good thing you try to make the first sentence argumentative, but I'm not sure what's going on here. People are not aware of the fact everyone has implicit biases, and obviously and unconsciously, even with a deep understanding of society, of life principles, our behavior is still inconsistent. Okay. Having seen the video, I know what you're trying to say, but someone who hasn't seen the video, they would be confused. What is going on here? The first sentence, if you go back to the rubric, you will see the first sentence should be argumentative, should include all these things which you have included, but it should also be concise and very clear. So make that clearer. So what does he argue? The main idea was that we all have our implicit biases, but we can you can solve the issue, the problem of implicit biases, if we take the necessary steps or something like that, right? Something like that. Very nice use of ing phrase. Very good. Using his professional background in community building organizations, comma, that's a good sentence structure. He claims, very nice, that bias is the preference or prejudice. Okay, that's a really nice sentence here. Very good. So you start with a bit of a definition of what a bias is. See how this is so much clearer than the previous sentence. He emphasizes that the main three, you want to use a word here, not the number, characteristics of this bias are. I'm not sure that's a word, non-awareness of the presence of unconscious bias. Well, you can just say our lack of awareness. And because he's talking to people in general as he addresses the audience, you can say our, right? Our lack of awareness of the presence of unconscious bias. Okay. Yeah, but you cannot do it like that with a comma. Because you see, here you need parallel structures. If you're going to use commas to separate the three characteristics, you're going to need parallel structures. And here, only the first and the third structure are parallel. The third one is people's associations. That's a noun. And the first one is a noun. Are lack of awareness. That's a noun. But here the second one is not parallel to the first and the third one. Beliefs and biases are contradict each other. That's a verb, you see. So if you want to do that, you could use a relative clause for the second one. You could say beliefs and biases which contradict each other. That's fine. And then you can move on. I would suggest, however, the best option, instead of trying to see, because it's a very important part of the video, right, when it talks about the characteristics. So instead of trying to fit all of that in one long sentence, why don't you just split it into three shorter sentences? So he emphasizes the three main characteristics of implicit bias. Or you could do a colon here. It would be good to use a colon, right? And then 1, 2, 3. So X, first characteristic, second characteristic, third characteristic. And actually, you will separate them by semicolons if you want to use one sentence. Because if you separate them by semicolons, that allows you to use all these fuller structures with verbs, and you see you don't have to have parallelism so much as when you use commas. Commas are very difficult to make the sentence structure really difficult to control. Semicolons is basically mini sentences, or you could just split them with full stops into 3 separate sentences. It's up to you. So he emphasized 3 main characteristics of implicit bias, either full stop or colon. First, implicit biases occur because of our lack of awareness of the presence of unconscious bias, full stop or semicolon. Now here, if you do it like that, with a semicolon or with a full stop, this will allow you to expand a little bit more. Because I'm not very sure, I know what you're saying because I've seen the video, but again, it's not very clear. Beliefs and biases contradict each other. I know what you're trying to say, but it's not going to be very clear to someone who hasn't seen the video. So beliefs, so I can say, secondly, biases often contradict our own conscious beliefs or something like that. So that's a little bit better. And by the way, are contradict are 2 verbs. You cannot do that here. You can either say are contradictory to each other or contradict each other. But 2 verbs cannot be together like that. So you have one of 2 ways to rephrase it. Are contradictory to each other, or simply contradict each other without the are. And thirdly, people's associations towards attitudes. Yeah, see, once again here. Again, you need to expand a little bit. And that's why it's better to separate it with full stops or semicolons, so that will allow you to expand all these 3 characteristics, so it's much more clear. Okay? People's associations towards attitudes and stereotypes, it's just, you need more here. You need to explain what are these associations towards attitudes. It's just not very clear. Okay, so expand that. He was talking about how we have our own biases, and they are based on mental associations which are quick. You mentioned those here, right? So all of that, you could move that up. The mental associations, which he says are quick and automatic, they trigger these stereotypes and biases, which may result in hurtful behavior or something like that. So you see, if you do a full stop and a full sentence, that will allow you to explain a lot better. Now, here he uses the call and response method with the audience. Okay, nice use of a reporting verb. But again, you want to move that to the previous sentence. You want to explain about those mental associations, right? So move that to the previous sentence. Now that we know what these are, these automatic associations which are very quick and which trigger these biases, you can say he also uses call and response to illustrate these mental associations and at the unconscious level. Now that's fine. I'm just not very sure that you actually need this. That you need to mention this game that he plays with the audience, because I think that would be an example. That would be, remember how we stay away from evidence and examples? He does that with the audience, but he does it in order to illustrate a point. So he basically does a little game with them. I'll just say here, stay away from examples. He plays this little game with the audience to show them that we do have these automatic associations which are very quick. But the supporting idea that he illustrates is the one above here, which is quick associations trigger biases. And if you've already mentioned the supporting idea, you don't really need this example. but the wording here is quite good. See? So you could use that wording to explain in the sentence above how that works. Mental quick associations trigger biases. All right. He notes too, very good use of reporting verbs throughout. He claims, he notes, he contends. You've tried a variety, which is a very good idea. So, good use of reporting verbs throughout the paragraph. He notes too that if we want to move the country forward, okay, again you put a comma here. Punctuation, you need some kind of punctuation, comma, not some kind, but comma. In order to move the country forward, we need to focus on implicit biases. I would just use the plural because he's talking about implicit biases in general. So plural is better here. Throughout this summary, the plural is better. We need to focus on implicit biases, and it needs several steps. I'm not sure. Who needs several steps? The bias? Or who needs? The bias does not need steps. You could just say we need to focus on implicit biases. We could just basically rephrase this whole thing. You could just say that he gives 3 recommendations. If we want to address the issue of biases, if we want to solve the problem of biases, we need to follow 3 recommendations, or we need to follow several steps. And now here you have used that structure which I recommended here with the colon and then with the 1, 2, 3. Again, I would say, because it's such an important part of his video, and because you do want to explain each one of them carefully, you probably want semicolons here. You could stay with this, with a colon, and then separate the three steps, recommendations with semicolons, and explain them fully. So diagnosis of we face challenges. I'm not very sure what that means. A diagnosis of we face challenges. See, that is way too short. He was talking about first we need to diagnose the problem, we need to become aware of our own biases, and that is the first step to solving the problem. First you need to realize the problem. So explain that. Explain. And plus diagnosis of we face challenges, that's just not grammatical. Predicting and preventing of discriminating behavior, okay, that's a little bit better. Again, semicolon. We need to be able to put ourselves in situations where we can predict our own behavior. How likely are we to experience biases in a specific situation? And so on. You're not going to say it with so many words, obviously, but that's the idea there. So we need to be able to predict our own likelihood to engage in discriminating behavior. See, something like that would do. But you've said it better here. This second recommendation is explained better than the first and the third. The third one is reducing shame and shaming. I'm not very sure why are we reducing shame, what's going on. He was saying basically we need to engage in open discussion. We need to freely and without guilt, without feelings of shame, learn to discuss our own biases, and then we can go on and fix the problem, right? So I want to explain this again after a semicolon. As a result, he maintains that the self-change work and broader social change. Okay, here you've repeated a lot of the wording that he says, and you don't need that. Try to use your own words, and here you could use finally, right? In conclusion, something like that. And just try and use your own wording. But overall, Banu, this is a very structured, very good, well-written summary. So, good work, and I hope this was helpful. Good luck.